The story of Mary and Joseph. Take this time to subscribe. The story of Mary and Joseph, Jesus' parents. There was a woman, Mary, who was engaged to a man, Joseph. Mary was a young Jewish girl, just recently engaged to Joseph, who was a carpenter. They were just ordinary people living in Nazareth in Galilee. Before they got married, Mary found out she was pregnant. She couldn't believe it, as she was still a virgin. An angel visited her in her sleep and explained to her that she was having a baby by the Holy Spirit, and that baby would be the Son of God and would be named Jesus. Joseph, her fiancé, was a man who always did the right thing. As Mary and Joseph weren't married yet, he planned to break up their relationship privately as to not disgrace her in public. By the law, Joseph had every right to break the relationship and even put her to death with stoning because she was pregnant with someone else's baby. However, an angel also visited Joseph and told him to not be afraid to take Mary as his wife, as this was all part of God's plan. Joseph did exactly what the angel told him to do and took Mary as his wife. While Mary was pregnant, they had to travel to their homeland, Bethlehem, to complete a census. While they were there, Mary's baby was due to be born. They struggled to find an inn to stay at, so they accepted the offer of a stable/cave where the animals were kept. Here, Mary gave birth to her son, Jesus, the Emmanuel, the Son of God. The story of Mary, Joseph and Jesus, straight from the Bible. Matthew 1. This was how the birth of Jesus Christ took place. His mother Mary was engaged to Joseph, but before they were married, she found out that she was going to have a baby by the Holy Spirit. Joseph was a man who always did what was right, but he did not want to disgrace Mary publicly, so he made plans to break the engagement privately. While he was thinking about this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, "Joseph, descendant of David, do not be afraid to take Mary to be your wife. For it is by the Holy Spirit that she has conceived. She will have a son, and you will name him Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins." Now all this happened in order to make come true what the Lord had said through the prophet: "A virgin will become pregnant and have a son, and he will be called Emmanuel," which means a virgin will become pregnant and have a son, and he will be called Emmanuel /. So when Joseph woke up, he married Mary, as the angel of the Lord had told him to. But he had no sexual relations with her before she gave birth to her son. And Joseph named him Jesus. Matthew 2. Jesus was born in the town of Bethlehem in Judea, during the time when Herod was king. Soon afterward, some men who studied the stars came from the east to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the baby born to be the King of the Jews? We saw his star when it came up in the east, and we have come to worship him." When King Herod heard about this, he was very upset, and so was everyone else in Jerusalem. He called together all the chief priests and the teachers of the law and asked them, "Where will the Messiah be born?" "In the town of Bethlehem in Judea," they answered. For this is what the prophet wrote: "Bethlehem in the land of Judah. You are by no means the least of the leading cities of Judah. For from you will come a leader who will guide my people Israel." So Herod called the visitors from the east to a secret meeting and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem with these instructions: "Go and make a careful search for the child, and when you find him, let me know, so that I too may go and worship him." And so they left, and on their way they saw the same star they had seen in the east. When they saw it, how happy they were, what joy was theirs! It went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. They went into the house, and when they saw the child with his mother Mary, they knelt down and worshipped him. They brought out their gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and presented them to him. Then they returned to their country by another road, since God had warned them in a dream not to go back to Herod. Joseph, husband of Mary, plays a dramatic role in Jesus' early life. However, he is rarely mentioned and often disappears from view. Who is this often underappreciated figure, and why is he important? Why is Joseph even mentioned in the Gospels? One might ask why documents that claim Jesus as the Son of God mention Joseph at all. A simple answer is that Joseph's patriarchal status in Jesus' life is a historical tradition that exists. It therefore gets incorporated into the Jesus story by the evangelists. Yet, in John's Gospel, Joseph is only briefly mentioned by Jesus' disciples, John 1:45, and the crowd, John 6:42. Luke is similarly succinct, with only 5 mentions. In only one of those does Joseph act when he travels from Nazareth to Bethlehem to register in his ancestral town, Luke 2:4. In the other instances, he is mentioned only in his relationship with others, Mary, Luke 1:27, and Jesus, Luke 2:16, Luke 3:23, Luke 4:22. Only Matthew focuses upon the Joseph tradition for a theological reason. The Son of God still needed a human father because he was also truly human, exposed to threats which demanded parental care. In contrast to the other Gospels, therefore, Joseph takes a very active role in Matthew's account and helps flesh out the story of Jesus' birth. Why are Joseph's actions important? Mary's prospects would have been tenuous, if not outright dangerous, if Joseph had abandoned Mary. In order to see that, readers need to understand some of the norms of marriage in the 1st century CE. If Joseph and Mary followed the norms of a typical Jewish couple in 1st century Nazareth, Joseph would have been several years Mary's senior. They would have entered into a formal engagement, complete with the ceremony and witnesses, but they would not have lived together nor consummated their marriage. In many modern cultures, we could say the wedding had happened, but there was a long hiatus before the honeymoon. In the interim time, Mary became pregnant. Upon discovering this, Joseph was within his rights to expose the pregnancy publicly and decry his involvement. Based on Deut 22:21, Mary could have been stoned, but there are no records that the full extent of this law was executed in the 1st century. The more common option would be to shame her publicly, to bring her before the town council. The Gospel of Matthew says that Joseph does not consider this option but planned to put her away quietly, Matt 1:19 /. Even if Joseph had carried through with his plan, Mary would have been left in a very precarious position. With a broken engagement and an illegitimate child on the way, her family might have kept her at home, or they might not have wanted to share in her shame. She then would have been left with little recourse other than to follow the path of several of the women in Jesus' genealogy presented in Matthew, Matt 1-3, Matt 1-5 /, supporting herself with the sale of her body. Joseph, however, decided to stay married to Mary because an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, Matt 1:20-23. The angel tells Joseph to take Mary as his wife. As soon as Joseph wakes up, he brings Mary into his home. That Joseph was willing to take Mary and ignore the questioning glances of his neighbors, who could do the math between Jesus' birth and her move-in date, shows the selflessness of his character and his willingness to listen to this supernatural instruction. When the birth happens, he also obeys the angel in naming the baby Jesus. Joseph has another dream, possibly as long as 2 years later, that changes the trajectory of their lives. The angel comes again, this time to instruct Joseph to escape to Egypt in order to flee the wrath of the paranoid King Herod, Matt 2:13. This time Joseph wakes in the middle of the night to obey. He and Mary and Jesus remain in Egypt until Joseph has a third dream in which he learns that the king who sought his son's life has died. Consequently, the three move again. Joseph alone, while he is awake, senses a continued threat from Herod's son Archelaus but does not choose a safer location until he gets word in a dream to settle in Galilee, Matt 2:22. Joseph's movements might seem irrational to many contemporary readers, but divine direction in dreams was a common and often acceptable form of decision-making. In Genesis, another Joseph, sold into slavery by his brothers, was known especially for his dreams, which predicted famine in the land of Egypt, Gen 37 and Gen 40. Josephus, the 1st century Jewish historian, gives ample coverage in his writings to the occurrence and interpretation of dreams. Matthew the evangelist certainly validates it. Joseph's dreams not only keep Jesus safe, they also fulfill God's plan laid out centuries before in Israel's scriptures. The text of Matthew, and Luke 3:23 for that matter, indicate that Joseph is superfluous to Jesus' existence, but necessary for his safety. If Joseph hadn't listened to his angelic dreams, Jesus would have been the child of a single homeless mother and the vulnerable target of a maniacal king. As always, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe this channel.